Thank you, Speaker. I rise to speak in support of the Electoral Funding Amendment Bill 2025. And in doing so, at the outset, I want to thank the Minister for bringing this bill forward. I would also like to congratulate the independent members in this House for the collaborative way that they have worked with government, with the departments, in order to put forward this very common sense approach. And it just seems that every other time we tend to have a by-election, we seem to get a new independent. So it's very, very
on the other side,
timely. Only from the other side, yes. I acknowledge the Minister's interjection there. But look, it's very important that we clarify why this bill is needed. And the bill really does distinguish the relationship between the payments from the Administration Fund under Part 5 of the Electoral Funding Act 2018 and members' additional entitlements under the Parliamentary Remuneration Act 1989. The bill addresses concerns raised by the New South Wales Electoral Commission, and that's Section 84(1)(b) Roman numeral 2 of the Electoral Funding Act 2018 in its current form creates undesirable administrative complexity in the claims assessment process, as well as uncertainty for members about the management of their electoral funding obligations and entitlements. And I know, Speaker, every single member in this place takes their obligations in terms of their electoral funding disclosures and their entitlements very, very seriously. So we really do need to sort this out. The amendments will provide certainty and clarity for stakeholders who are both making and determining claims for payment from the Administration Fund. So how are the provisions of this bill developed? So following the amendments to Section 84(1)(b) Roman numeral 2 of the Electoral Funding Act 2018 and 2024, the New South Wales Electoral Commission reviewed how parliamentary allowances, other than the electoral allowance, must be treated during the assessment of claims from the Administration Fund. And the Electoral Commission recommended that the government consider a further amendment to the Act to clarify the relationship between payments from the Administration Fund and members' additional entitlements under the Parliamentary Remuneration Act 1989. I thank the Commission for raising this very important matter with the government. The government agrees that an amendment is desirable because the current operation of Section 84(1)(b) Roman numeral 2 means that eligible independent members of Parliament and political parties cannot be reimbursed from the Administration Fund for items that are claimable under a parliamentary allowance, even if a member has not actually made a claim under such allowance. And I acknowledge the contribution by the member for Sydney and the very important issues that he raised in his debate. Independent members of Parliament and the New South Wales Electoral Commission were consulted on the policy, as I previously said, and on the draft bill. The Department of Parliamentary Services, which administers members' additional entitlements, was also consulted on the draft bill. The savings and transitional provisions have been drafted following close consultation with the Electoral Commission and independent members of Parliament to reflect the intended operational approach to managing affected claims once the amendments are enacted. And what is the purpose of the Administration Fund? Well, that fund was established under Part 5 of the Electoral Funding Act 2018 and is administered by the New South Wales Electoral Commission. The purpose of the Administration Fund is to reimburse eligible political parties and independent members of Parliament for administrative and operating expenditure incurred in a quarterly period, up to a capped amount. For elected independent members, the quarterly amount is the amount of actual administration expenditure incurred by or on behalf of the elected member during the quarter to which the payment relates. For 2025, it is capped at $70,700 per quarter. The quarterly amounts are paid in advance, and any unused portion of the quarterly cap or administrative expenditure incurred in excess of the cap can be carried forward to be used in a subsequent quarterly claim in the same calendar year. So what can be claimed currently? In the Electoral Funding Act 2018, it specifies what expenses are included and excluded from the scope of the administration expenditure for the purpose of the claims from the administration fund, and that's under section 84.1. Section 84.1A of the Act provides that expenditure for administrative and operating expenses can be claimed from the fund, and this includes expenditure for the administration or management of the activities an eligible party or elected member, expenditure for conferences, seminars, meetings or similar functions at which the policies of the eligible party or elected member are discussed or formulated, expenditure on providing information to the public or a section of the public about the eligible party or elected member, expenditure on providing information to members and supporters of the eligible party or elected member, expenditure in respect of the audit of the financial accounts of the eligible party or elected member, expenditure on equipment and training to ensure compliance by the eligible party, elected members or endorsed candidates of the eligible party with the obligations under the Act. Expenditure on the reasonable remuneration of staff engaged in the above activities for the eligible party or elected member, being the proportion of that remuneration that relates to the time spent on those activities. Reasonable expenditure on equipment or vehicles used for the purposes of the above activities, being the proportion of the cost of their acquisition and operation that relates to the use of the equipment or vehicles for those activities. Expenditure on office accommodation for the above staff and equipment, and expenditure on the interest payments on loans. Clause 4A of the Electoral Funding Regulation 2018 also prescribes additional categories of expenditure that can be claimed from the fund, but expenditure which cannot be claimed from the fund under section 84.1b of the Act is electoral expenditure and expenditure incurred substantially in respect of operations or activities that relate to the election of members to the Parliament other than the New South Wales Parliament. The bill proposes to omit section 84.1b2 from the Electoral Funding Act, which currently also excludes expenditure for which a member may claim a parliamentary allowance as a member, other than expenditure for which the electoral allowance is payable under the Parliamentary Remuneration Act 1989 Part 3 from being claimed from the fund. This amendment will permit independent members and political parties to claim expenses from the administration fund, even if an item may also be claimed as an additional entitlement by members under the Parliamentary Remuneration Act 1989. Speaker, it sounds very dry, but in fact it is very important, and it is specifically important for those independent members. It gives them clarity, it gives them certainty, and it also gives the Electoral Commission what they have asked government for, and I commend this bill to the House.